This takes us back onto you, Mark, and you've chosen some interesting stories from the USA here, and we're back on the subject of migrants. This is something which just does not go away in America, and I know that there are many people who are deeply concerned as to what's happening as a result of these policies in the States. What have you got to tell us?
Well, the angle of this article from American Free Press in the latest edition is that the way I start the article out anyway is that the mass media cartel acts like it's a big surprise or news that they're finding dead illegal entrants, illegal aliens at or near the border. And my sources tell me this has been going on for 5, 6, 7 years. And ranchers will routinely find three a day, five or six, maybe eight a week, especially the larger ranchers near the border. They'll find the dead illegal aliens. And they can't tell the authorities about it, generally speaking, the Border Patrol, the state police, etc., because oftentimes then those agencies look at the ranchers suspiciously, like, did you do this? Did you kill them? Were you responsible for, encroaching upon the rights of the illegal aliens? And so there's a lot of frustration down at the border among these ranchers, some of whom have good sheriffs that really want to solve the problem, but others have sheriffs that are part of the Texas state apparatus, and they're trying to play both sides of the fence on this, pardon the pun, and they're trying to sweep some of this under the rug. So the bottom line, however, though, is that there's been dead migrants found along the border for a long time. It's not really news in and of itself, but now this article also talks about the Darien Gap, which is some dense jungle between Colombia and Panama, where you go from South to Central America. And some Venezuelans, reports are telling us, are so desperate, evidently, allegedly, that they're trying to go through the Darien Gap, and many are dying there. And so what's perplexing is why so many people want to trek so far to go to the United States. The United States is not paved with gold. I've talked to people that have lived here a few years that came here legally and illegally, and they were rather disillusioned that it wasn't, the promised land or the Shangri-La that they were told. That being said, there's still this mad rush to get here by so many people. And the big concern I've written about is what if Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador lose such a large part of their able-bodied population, the most able-bodied young men and women to plant and harvest crops, et cetera, that they cease to function. And the leaders, so-called like Mr. Biden, the misadministration in the White House, they never even talk about that. They never really talk substantively about having diplomatic relations with these Central American countries and asking them, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do to stem the flow of these people before they ever leave your country? What are you going to do about too many able-bodied people leaving your nation and having even more dysfunctionality, and then making those countries even more vulnerable to the trepidations of the drug cartels? The drug cartels feed on that weakness and they promote it. And then so many Americans like myself, especially those that live closest to the border, my best sources there, are just flabbergasted at this, that the American government and even governors like Greg Abbott in Texas don't do more to address international diplomacy and get to the bottom of those countries of origin, and why those countries of origin and their governments are doing nothing to stem the flow, and how they're getting through all the various borders and all the way here without Mexico intervening. So there's we talked about that intentional invasion a few times back that I was on UK Column. It's a really important new video about the situation at the border, and I understand it's being updated from time to time. I think it's just an intentionalinvasion.com if anybody wants to check it out. Very compelling, not too long, very interesting. Again, it's intentionalinvasion.com, and that explains kind of the underbelly of what's going on. So
Well,
the death
Mark,
toll
perhaps
is rising, and Biden just seems oblivious to the fact that so many people are dying to get here. But people like myself want to know why. We want to know the deeper causes and effect of this.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you there, Mark, but of course we see this happening in Europe. It's happening on a worldwide scale, and it is
Right.
remarkable that if we come back to the name of Peter Sutherland, who was previously, he's now died, but formerly he was the UN's ambassador for migration. He said that we need more migration to break down the homogeneity of nation states. He was very open in
Exactly.
stating this. And so when we look for the cause, we've got at some stage to look at policy within the United Nations.
What fascinates me about this is how the narrative is portrayed in the mainstream press on both sides of the Atlantic. We see similar narratives in so many different areas. And that's not, I'm not in any way trying to suggest that there's anything not real about the migration.
Yeah.
And my point here is how that migration is being presented to people in the press. And we need a bit of honesty there.
We need a lot of honesty. Well, Mark, give us some good news. You've got a title here, Free Speech Wins in Texas.
Yeah. Federal Judge Andrew S. Oldham, Oldham, has ruled that the way social media companies are censoring information runs up against the First Amendment. Excuse me, and he even called it an inversion. I repeat, an inversion of the First Amendment. And so in Texas, um, the federal judge social media says here. Social media companies have tried to argue simultaneously that they are both platforms and publishers, and they'll be whichever one they want to be, based on whatever fits their situation. But um, this judge has ruled that they can't have it both ways, and so this is really good news in terms of making these social media